All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of TDX. Thank you for being here bright and early. Today we will talk about modeling customer data with an industry focus. Before we begin, I will talk about a couple things on the roadmap, so please make your purchasing decisions based on what's in the product today, not what's on the roadmap. So my name is Georgi Savelyev. I'm the founder and a certified technical architect, or CTA, at Stratus Carta. We're a boutique consultancy that provides expert services for Salesforce Industries and Revenue Cloud, and that's what we'll be talking about with you guys today. So for the agenda, we'll start with an intro to Salesforce Industries, go through the 3 service-centric industries and understand what's common between them: communications, media, energy, and utility cloud. And then we'll go through the sales and service cloud data models to recap on those, understand how comms, media, and energy extend them, map that to a customer example, and finally cover key takeaways. So a little history lesson before we get started. There was a company called Velocity. This was a company that was focused on bringing industries into Salesforce. And a lot of this came from the Siebel DNA. If anyone has heard from Siebel, a lot of the folks from Siebel went over to Velocity and then became part of Salesforce as part of the acquisition in 2020. So the 3 industry clouds that we'll focus on today are the 3 on the top there: communications or telco, media, energy, and utilities. We'll understand why these have something in common in just a moment. And then here we see all of the different industry clouds. These changed a little bit, so I may have missed something. There may be something new, but this is the general idea. The ones with the icon in the top left, those are the former Velocity clouds, so you can see there are 6 of them. And then the ones with a green check mark, those are using Revenue Cloud. So in terms of CPQ, there were 2 CPQ solutions in Salesforce: Salesforce CPQ, formerly known as SteelBrick, and Velocity Industry CPQ, formerly known as Velocity. Going forward, there's a new CPQ called Revenue Cloud, and all of these industry clouds are converging over to Revenue Cloud. So what we'll talk about today is really focused on the core customer data model as part of Revenue Cloud with these industries. So why comms, media, energy? Why are we grouping these things together? Historically, back in the Siebel days, these were grouped together in kind of their own vertical. And the real key thing is all of them focus on the main thing that they're selling is services, intangible services. And they may, as part of these industries, you may sell some physical goods along with it, like a telco will sell you an iPhone and service on top of it, but the real core thing that they're selling is the mobile service, not the device. So the key thing is all of these have services as their core offering. So if we look at communications, we have internet, mobile, TV service. All of those things that you use as a consumer, those are really focused on services. If we look at media, Netflix, Spotify, that sort of thing, those are all subscriptions. That's an intangible service. And finally, if we look at electricity, what's powering this room, air conditioning, electricity, et cetera, again, service. So all of these have service as their core offering. That's why they're grouped together, and that's why the customer data model is very similar between them. So when we talk about customers and their services, what are the key things that we actually care about? Let's take an example of my daughter. So she's 2 years old, too young to have a mobile phone, but in the future she'll have one. And the 3 things that we care about for that are: what is the service itself? 5G mobile service, maybe a handset. Who is the owner of it? It would be my family account for me, my wife, my daughter. Who is the user of it? Which would be my daughter. Who is the payer of it? Which would be me or my wife. So there are like 3 dimensions we care about: who owns it, who pays for it, who uses it, right? Now let's take a look at the Sales and Service Cloud data model. Hopefully most of you are familiar with this, so this should be a recap. We start with an account. An account is either a legal entity of a business or a B2C customer that you're doing business with. Then we have a contact. This is a person at that legal entity. If we're talking about B2C, the account and contact would be one and the same. And the thing that pulls them together is the service account for B2C. It basically tightly couples them into one entity. Then imagine we have another account. So imagine we have a contractor who works for an SI. They also work together with Salesforce or with their customer, so they have a relation. They would be a contact under the SI's account, and they would have a relationship with other accounts like Salesforce or their customers, and we group them together via an account-contact relationship. Then if we're talking about orders, we would have the order itself. It is a child of the main account. We have order items, or the goods or services that you're buying. Those are under the order. And then once we fulfill the order, we would have our order items become assets that represent the fulfilled goods and services. Now the key thing is the assets, order, all of those are associated to the parent account. But what happens, take that previous example of my daughter's mobile service. What happens if we want to separately represent who is the owner, who is the payer, who is the user? We don't have that in the Sales Service Cloud data model out of box. So before we see how comms, media, and energy address these, if you're not aware, architects.salesforce.com has some amazing data models. So these ones in particular, Sales Service Cloud and Products and Price Books, those are all available as lucid charts that you can download, clone, and use for your own project. And there are a bunch of other data models out there as well. Take a look at this if you're not aware. Now let's see how comms, media, and energy extend these. So the first thing is we still have the account, but there are different flavors of accounts. There are consumer accounts for B2C, and then business accounts for B2B. We'll start with the B2C example first. So we have a consumer account. There would be a record type to differentiate between B2C, B2B customers. We have contacts, same thing. This represents a person at that account. If there's a relationship to another account, there would be another account contact relationship. So far all the same, only difference is that record type. Now the key new thing is service accounts and billing accounts. If you've ever worked with Siebel or heard of Siebel, you probably are familiar with these concepts. A service account represents the user of a service, typically the location, but if we're talking about something like mobile, that doesn't have a location, so it just represents the general user. And then billing accounts, these represent who the service is billed to or the payer of the account. Then when we talk about orders, we would have an order that is a child of the consumer account, and then the order items, the goods or services that you're buying, those can be associated to different service accounts or locations or your users, and different billing accounts or who is paying for it. So this is kind of the key difference. We have the billing account, service account, and all of the line items point to them so that we can represent separately who's the owner, the consumer account, who's the user, the service account, who's the payer, the billing account. And then assets follow the same pattern. They are a direct child of the consumer account, and then they're linked to the service and billing account. The other piece here is on the left-hand side, we have the recipients, the order item recipient. This represents the location while you're quoting or ordering, and then it will become a service account later. We'll talk about the life cycle of recipients in just a second. Now, if we look at the B2B data model, it is very, very similar. I highlighted the differences here in pink. So if we look at the, on the top, the parent account would be a business account. We would have a record type to differentiate between consumer and business. Oftentimes with business accounts, you would have a hierarchy of different legal entities that are owning each other. And then if we look at the bottom, we have the quotes and orders. So on the B2B world, you would typically start with an opportunity, move to quoting, move to ordering. And B2C, you typically skip directly to ordering. So we have quote and quote line item. Now our recipients are not only order item recipients, but quote line item recipients. And we'll talk about the life cycle of those in a second. But same idea. We have our line items that point over to the service account and billing account for who is using, who is paying for it. Now let's talk about these recipients and locations a bit more. So if we take a B2B example, we start with a quote. We have quote line items that represent our goods and services. And then we have the quote line item recipients that represent where we're quoting. The power of this is it acts as kind of a staging object, similar to how a lead will become an account and opportunity, but it lets you kind of filter out data so you're not adding junk into your accounts and opportunities. Recipients is the same deal. When you're quoting, you might not know the full address details. In the telco world, you would want to know, okay, for this location, can they get fiber service? Can they get DSL? Can they get cable? Those things you can store on the recipient, and Revenue Cloud uses these for the quoting process. When you convert from quote to order, you then have an order, order item, and order item recipient. These all convert directly. And then when you fulfill the order, your order items become assets. Your order item recipients become service accounts. Now, this would be for a customer that you're quoting for the very first time. If you're quoting for them again, then you can link the recipients over to existing service accounts. So all of this connects together, and then you can also, in the future, link to existing service accounts. So generally, the concept is similar to like leads becoming accounts, opportunities, and contacts. It's basically a way to stage the location data. Now, let's kind of recap what are the key additions to the Sales and Service Cloud data models. So we have the service accounts. Again, these represent the locations or users of a service. This is a different record type of the account object. You define in setup what record type represents a service account for you, and you are responsible for creating that record type and associating it. Then we have the billing account. This is a new standard object that's part of Salesforce billing. And then in the future, this will be introduced into the Salesforce Industries data clouds so that you'll be able to use the new standard object. We have the line items with lookups to all of these. So our quote line item, order item, and assets, those have lookups over to the service account and the billing account. And finally, the recipients, this is the staging for the locations. Now, if you've been paying attention, you'll remember that when we talked about the Sales and Service Cloud data model, we use person accounts to represent B2C customers. This topic always comes up on all of my projects, and the general best practices do not use person accounts because they cannot participate in hierarchies. That means a person account cannot be the parent of another account and cannot have a parent account. If you remember in the data model we just looked at, our service account points over to a parent account, so that kind of breaks that model. And also the out-of-box conversion of recipients over to service accounts, that would break as well if you use this. So it's up to you if you decide to use this or not, but typical best practices do not use person accounts. So enough theory, let's kind of see what this looks like in a real-life example. So let's take a fictional family. You might recognize some of the names here. Chat with me afterwards if you know where this is from. So we have Rachel, Ross, Ben, Emma. They have 2 locations. They have an apartment in the city. They have a townhouse in the country. They have a set of different services, internet at one place, internet, TV, mobile at another, and everyone has their own mobile services. And then we have 3 different payers. So let's restructure this a little bit to kind of break this down into what the service accounts and billing accounts look like. We have Rachel, who has the 3 services. They're at that first location. She is the payer for them. We have Ross, who is the payer for both his and Ben's services. Ross has 2 services at that townhouse in the country. Ben has 1 mobile service. And then finally, we have Emma, who has her own mobile service, and then she is the payer of it. So what does this actually look like from a data shape? How many service accounts do we have? How many billing accounts? How do we link everything together? Let's take a quick look. So let's take this one person at a time, one person with all of their services, okay? So we start in the very middle. We have Rachel's household consumer account. That would represent the overall grouping of pulling all of this together so that we know all of the service accounts and billing accounts are tied to the same family. Then we have a service account and a billing account for her. So the service account represents the location or the user. The billing account represents the payer. And then we have her assets. So there would be multiple asset records there representing her internet, TV, and mobile service. And then those point over to her billing account, her service account, and the parent account. And of course, there are contacts for everyone on the far right as well. Now, if we look at Ross, he is paying for his service. It's in a different location. It's under the same family. So we have a service account for him for that second location, his location. It's tied to the consumer account for Rachel to group them all together. We have the billing account for him because he's a separate payer, and then his line items point to all of those, and he has his own contact. If we look at Ben, the difference between Ben and Ross is that Ross is paying for Ben's services. So we reuse the Ross billing account, okay? We introduce a new service account because he has a new set of services, and then his line items point to all of those and the Rachel consumer account. And then finally, we have Emma. She has her own service at her own location, is the payer for it, so we create a new set of accounts for them, and then they all point over to the consumer account. Now, if you take a B2B example, imagine that we have a B2B business with 4 offices and 3 different departments paying for it. It would look very, very similar to this. We would just have, instead of service accounts for different people, those would be the different offices. Instead of billing accounts for different people, they would be the different departments that are billed to. But basically, the same data model. For those of you that are coming from industry, cloud managed packages, or Velocity, just a couple of advanced topics for you. Affinity groups, or the household object. In managed package, we had an object to represent a loose grouping of different people. So for example, you can have students that live in the same household. In core, there is no direct equivalent to this. You could look at using Data Cloud or Data 360 for kind of building those segments. The party model, this has largely been replaced by account relationship and account contact relationship, so generally use those instead of party model. Subscriptions, these are a different way of grouping line items together. So if your service account grouping doesn't work, you can create a subscription custom object and use that to group things in a different way. And then finally, premises and service points. Premise represents a location outside of the context of a service or of a customer. Service point represents where you can get service, for example, an electricity meter, a fiber outlet in your home, etc. For premises, there's a new standard location object that you can use. For service point, there's no equivalent, so you're welcome to introduce your own objects there. So I did mention the architects.salesforce.com. This data model is not there yet because just recently Comms, Media, and Energy Cloud have moved over to Revenue Cloud. On our website here, I created a Lucidchart data model. You're welcome to download that, clone that, and use this as an artifact for your projects. Very useful to have kind of a living artifact that you're maintaining over time. And then hopefully we'll see this live on architects.salesforce.com in the future. So key takeaways, what did we learn? Industry clouds have data models that are built on the foundation of Sales and Service Cloud. They take all of that great stuff that's horizontally available and build industry-specific things on top of it. And here we focus specifically on comms, media, and energy, but this applies across different industries as well. I previously was working for a healthcare manufacturer. We had this exact same concept of service accounts and billing accounts. I think this actually applies for most, if not all, industries. Customers are more than just an account and contact. Remember, we need to care about who is paying for the service, who is using the service, and who owns the service. Account hierarchies are powerful. We have the owners and users for the parent account and the service account. We have new standard objects that are available as part of Revenue Cloud and these industry clouds, the billing accounts and locations, and we need to always think about limitations. Remember, person accounts, they don't support hierarchies, so don't use them. So that's it for today. If you want to download these slides, you can grab the link there. The Lucidchart is available there as well. And then if you're interested in any other industries or Revenue Cloud content, I love to evangelize on this. So connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to have a chat with you. And that covers the content. So hopefully you'll learn something useful for those of you that are new to this. You kind of learned the basics. For those of you that have worked with Velocity, maybe learned how it translates over to core. So there will be session summaries available soon. You can download those from the Salesforce Events app or on the Sessions page. And then please fill out the survey. You can get free coffee. I would love your feedback to know what I can do better for next time and give you guys more great content. So that's it. If you have any other questions, feel free to come up to me on stage. Happy to chat and enjoy the rest of your TDX.